morning. BOE, BOE. You guys ready? All right. Enough of this. Nothing. Sounds like a Trump rally, huh? Hey, da boo boo. You gotta get the pips from the picnic basket. Hey, welcome to Forex.Today, the YouTube community of almost 20,000 foreign exchange traders. We gather here today to conduct technical and fundamental analysis with the overriding goal of trade planning. Let me remind you that trading is risky, not appropriate for everyone. Your past performance, good or bad, is not necessarily indicative of future results. Please stay small, stay humble, focus on the long term. Never risk money you cannot afford to lose. My name is Wayne. I am a currency trader just like you. So what's on my mind? Hey, Bank of India was on my mind. Bank of Japan is on my mind. The Bank of England is on my mind. The Bank of the United States of America is on my mind. Holy smokes. And what is the ECB going to do? Oh, my goodness. Okay. Amazing stuff. So let's talk about it. Technically, fundamentally, you could even ask, hey, Wayne, how do you feel? And I could say, I don't know. That depends. How do you feel? Huh? Whoa. Hey now. Is that a little better? I guess that's a little better. So anyways, ask questions, get involved. I will do my best to help. I am a servant here. I'm here to be a resource. There are also other resources. In the description below, you will see a link to my trading book, Strategic and Tactical Forex Trading. You will see a link to my chart templates at metatraders.com. You will see a link to free training videos and video training courses on the FX Bootcamp YouTube channel. You will learn. You will have a link to premium training for a whopping $88 a year. You get 65 hours or more of training and access to special events like the one I did yesterday. $88 a year. The link to fxbootcamp.com is in the description below. And then, of course, Traders Way. You're going to need a broker. I recommend Traders Way. I like them. I like their business model. I like their execution speed. I like their swaps. Never needed no customer service, but I heard you can get a hold of them, which is good. Now, this is still a little off. But, hey, man. They're real people, and they provide a real service, and it's better than most. Yeah. So anyways, the link to Traders Way is in the description below. I recommend you open up a demo account, give them a shot, see if they can earn your loyalty and respect like they earned mine. Here he is. This is what I want to do. I want to drink coffee and listen to the press conference here, but here's the here's the situation we're in. According to the Bank of England, inflation is going up and well beyond 10%. Growth in that economy is going to go down. And what's the Bank of England going to do about it? They don't know. It's split. The board is split 50-50. Okay? Isn't that interesting? So what are they going to do? They don't even know. So let's listen to Bailey.
The continuing higher, elevated level of uncertainty, and here I would highlight the terrible situation in Ukraine, and the spillover from that has kept uncertainty amongst businesses higher than I think it otherwise would. And we know that there is a relationship between uncertainty and investment, and it's negative. The second thing that we're picking up is, and I mentioned it in my opening remarks, is that the continuing supply chain issues in terms of ability to access goods, and particularly goods coming from I'd highlight China as the obvious one that's in the news a lot, also has an effect on investment, because much investment does depend on access to goods as part of investment products coming through supply chains. Now, I think neither of those takes away, I think, what we see as the outlook for investment going forwards. We still think that the super deduction, for instance, should have a positive effect, but I think it's holding it up. That would be my view. Both of you want to comment?
If I can, just to reinforce that before I pass on to Ben, we've still got growth of business investment this year, shown in table 1.C of 11%. So we have got that recovery in investment. It's not quite as strong as we were forecasting in February, but then, as Andrew said, we've had the terrible events in Ukraine. That has, we know that uncertainty is a key driver of lower investment. If you're a business, you will think of holding off until that uncertainty subsides. The other thing I'd say about the kind of context for the economy where we're starting from is the resilience of the labour market. Again, we are in the position where we're revising down the short-term path for unemployment, where we were forecasting unemployment would be higher than it's turned out to be. And I think that goes to the business environment in a way, because it is probably, you hear this a lot, businesses are very focused on the labour market, thinking about those hiring decisions, but probably at the same time, given the degree of uncertainty, thinking, well, I will prioritise hiring and the need for staff, maybe over making a capital investment for now until hopefully that uncertainty, which has been such a feature of recent years, subsides.
I was going to say, as Andrew said rightly, these words are not well defined. We don't use them ourselves. It was used often in reference to the 1970s. It is worth bearing in mind, again, I'm going to sort of back on about the scale of these effects. There's a good chart, 3.7, which is on page 92.
I hope you guys can hear okay.
Just for energy prices, I'd say, leaving aside steep rises and other imported goods. And I think I said in February it was getting close to twice what we saw in any single year in the 1970s. It's now more than twice in the forecast because of the invasion and the rise in gas prices since. So there's no doubt the shock is qualitatively looks a bit like one things that happened in the 1970s is actually
awesome.
Bigger.
Man, I was up late trading too.
Having said that,
man,
once you go further out, once these prices stabilise, and by the way, as Andrew pointed out, in forward markets, they do more than stabilise, they fall.
Turn it up a bit. Let's see if I can. I don't think I can, actually. That's YouTube.
But even if you assume that they will be,
Let's see.
mere stabilisation brings down import prices. You get into the latter half of the forecast.
Okay, that's very, very loud, Zhangdi.
Inflation is falling. So it is, as Andrew said, very much a forecast of two halves, and one shouldn't only look at what is going on in the very near term.
Jeff.
Thank you very much, Seb. Governor, can I ask you, was 75 basis points ever under consideration by any of the committee? Was it something that was discussed or suggested? And given that we've gone from 8-1 to 6-3, and 3 members of the committee...
So here's a part of the problem. They're split. They don't know what to do.
Does that mean that 50 basis points is still actively on the table and under consideration for the next meeting?
Well, it may help if I sort of explain a little bit about the process, about how we do it. So we have and particularly obviously meetings like this one, when we produce a monetary policy report, the committee spends a lot of time in each other's company discussing both the current state of the economy and the outlook.
Let me get you that report.
Issues. Out of that, one of my jobs is to formulate a proposition for the committee, which I, hope and think and take to be representing what I think is a sort of, a view, a majority view within the committee. And I say that because it therefore isn't the case that we have discussions where people say, well, what about 25 basis points? Well, what about 75 basis?
Here you go. Here's the report he's talking about.
Yeah, the state of the economy, the forecast.
Hey, you know what?
Issues
No.
Policy, and then out of that,
Give me some.
we formulate.
Give me some likes, man. Click the like button, and I'll give you the report he's talking about.
And
Come on.
As we see, members can support that the proposition was 25 basis points, as you can probably tell. And out of that, members say, well, I support it, or actually, as happens, they say, well, actually, I prefer something else. But you can then deduce from that nobody actually advocated 75 basis points because nobody's voted for it. And I hope that helps. It isn't the case that we stick on it, well, what about 75 basis points? What about some other number? We don't do it like that. Hopefully that helps.
Artie?
Thanks. Artie Archibald from The Times. I wanted to go back to your point about second round effects. You said that you were concerned about second round effects, but I can see in the report today that around 80% of the price rises are due to energy prices and tradable goods, and only a small proportion by other factors. Are you saying that we're not yet seeing second round effects, or that's not something that's immediately of concern, or kind of how far in the forecast are you expecting it to sort of be a problem with the economy, or is it an issue of proportions? I know that, Ben, you mentioned that it's just that energy prices are so much higher that it drowns out some of the other effects. It'd be good to get a bit more detail on that.
Well, let me start. Ben don't know what's coming on.
Wow, what a voice!
Price setting and margins, and also obviously pay and earnings. And our agents have been very active on both.
Wow, what a beautiful voice, a little bit scratchy, beautiful accent.
Agents have done a particular special piece of work for us on that. And I think it's fair to say that companies come back and say that they are expecting to maintain margins. Now, on earnings, again, as we said in February, the agents have done their earnings survey and they thought the average pay for this year was a bit under 5% expected. Now that number, again, a lot of helpful evidence from our agents, we've pushed up to about 5.75%. Now, as Ben was saying earlier, the really very, very difficult thing about this real income shock is that we can't hide it anywhere. It's going to have its effect. But of course, the second round effects mean that people can try to avoid, can try to get ahead of it, if you like. That's the best way of putting it, get ahead of it. But of course, if everybody tries to get ahead of it, then domestic inflation will push up, and that's the second round effect that we watch for very carefully, and we'll have to go on watching for. So, we've seen, as I say, some increase in the expected level of pay, and we're getting some reports. So our agents are passing back some reports to us that some firms are having to consider special bonuses during the course of the year to, in a sense, one-off increased forms of remuneration. And we have to be careful to include those so we don't miss them, as it were, in standard ways of measuring. So it's something we're going to have to watch very carefully. As you say, though, and you're right, at the moment, by far the larger contributor to the inflation story is the external.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you're right, it does cloud things a bit. As we've said, there's a number in the report somewhere as a rough guess, 4/5 of the overshoot at the end of this year, this huge overshoot, is due to these external factors. But
well, it's easier to predict what happened.
And we've got rates of wage growth, domestic price growth, that are currently faster than consistent with the target.
Well, just so you guys, if you're not sure, what the problem is, right? Again, what I explained is there's two parts. There's inflation, and there's growth. So if they raise interest rates, they're slowing growth down even more, but also lowering interest rates or lowering inflation. Okay? If they don't raise interest rates, then growth goes up, but inflation goes out of control. So no matter what they do, they're screwed. Okay? Well, end the war in Ukraine and end COVID in China, and you're fine. That's all you have to do is end the Ukraine war, open up China. Done.
That's probably the result of a mixture of two things. One, and mainly, the limited spare capacity in the economy, very tight labour market, but also maybe some, quote, second round effects as well. In other words, people trying to, and firms trying to make up for some of the losses in real income. So some of that is probably there. It's just that, as you rightly said, and by the way, that's the stuff that in some sense is driving the policy judgment, because it's likely to be the more persistent influence on inflation, a couple of years or so ahead. It's just that, as you say, right now the numbers are being swamped by these very steep rises in the prices of energy and other imported goods.
Philorama. Fill me up. Fill dirt. Oh, he's going to be so embarrassed. He forgot to turn the button on. Oh. Now, see, like, I don't know. I'm a funny dude. He's going to the Bank of England.
I'm not advocating, look, I'm not, again, please, we don't advocate government policy. What I do think, and I don't think I'm saying anything that isn't...
Okay, he's going to the Bank of England, and he doesn't shave.
On the resilience of energy supply, and particularly going into the winter. I mean, it is obviously...
I think that's rude.
It's highly seasonal. So as we look forwards, and given... given the continuing situation in Ukraine and Russia, we need to be, I think, very focused on the supply of energy. Now, I think the good news is...
I read a story from an Englishman in like the 60s. He showed up to work on a Saturday volunteering to work over the weekend, and he didn't wear a blazer, and he was fired
I think it is something that
on the weekend.
action has been taken on. But
He was in the office.
And I'll go back to,
I think he had a blazer on, but he wasn't wearing a suit. And they're like, not here, bro. You're fired.
Absolute focus, this is what, I would say I think needs to be done. Ben, do you want to...
Yeah, so you don't need to make comparisons with other periods of time to realise that this is an extremely severe shock. And I said...
Dude, the Bank of England, they always sit so casual, too. It's amazing.
Any single year in the 1970s, but I think beyond that, I'm not sure how helpful the comparisons are.
They should just be smoking cigars. Look, his collar's all messed up, his suit's wrinkled.
Forecast. I think there are many big differences.
And he's just slouched into his
I
chair.
think to generalise that everything else is the same, that would be wrong. So in respect of the severity and rise, and by the way, if you look at that graph, you will, for what it's worth, see that the share of energy payments, or the energy bills as a share of income for households, so the level as opposed to the change, is not actually as high as it was in the 70s. It's really the rate of increase that is so striking.
Is he a Cambridge guy?
Two things to add. First one, to build on Ben's point, we haven't got persistence in inflation, even with an inflation forecast conditioned on, using our usual conditioning assumptions. So we take the futures curve for the next 6 months for gas, and then we keep it flat. We've got inflation coming back to 2.1% 2 years out, and it would be lower than that if it was and we present a scenario that shows it being lower than that if it was actually fully conditioned on the futures curve. And I guess the other big thing to say is we are, and this goes back to the answer to the previous question, the MPC is acting to ensure that we don't see that persistence in inflation, to ensure that long run inflation expectations are anchored at the 2% target. We put up rates in 4 successive meetings to 1%, very much focusing on that aspect of inflation that we are doing something about to get inflation back to target. So you've got that monetary policy framework, which is completely different from however policy was operating in the 1970s.
Jack.
Just based on the market implied 2.5% rate path, you're forecasting quite a marked slowdown
the
in growth, whereas
path?
on the current rate paths on 1%, the economy seems to be avoiding this so-called recession. Given you signalled that the MPC thinks that further tightening will be possible in the coming months, how much headroom does the bank have to raise rates without tipping the economy into quite a severe slump?
What?
I don't think we think about it as headroom, because headroom is only a judgment you can make today. And today we've taken the decision which we think is appropriate for best meeting our objective of price stability, putting it into the context of obviously medium-term price stability and avoiding excessive and unwarranted variability in output. So that's what we do. Now, I don't look at it and say, well, you know what, we've got X headroom for next time, because next time we'll have more data, more information, and we'll just go back around the table and have to take our view again. But it's not a view which incorporates headroom. I think the second thing I'd say is that, of course, we do condition our forecast on the market path of interest rates, because I think we've said many, many times before, it doesn't mean we're a slavish follower of it.
I wouldn't exaggerate the position in either of those forecasts. We've got growth next year close to 0. It's not a slump. That's on the market path, which, as you say, rises. And equally, nor would I describe the path based on constant interest rates as some sort of boom. It is still the case, even were rates to stay where they are, that growth slows and that unemployment beyond this year starts to rise. And that is because of the point I made earlier, that the big moving parts here are not policy. The big moving parts in these forecasts are the extreme jump in these import prices this year and then their stabilisation. That is the story of the forecast. And there is this contrast between the constant rate and market rates one, but relative to that, the effects of that big jump and then stabilisation, they're small.
Holly.
Funny thing is, her name is Hallelujah.
Holly Williams, PA News Agency. Governor, we're in the middle of the company AGM season, and investors are already showing their dissatisfaction on chief executive pay. Given the cost of living crisis and the hardship faced by many, particularly those on lower incomes, I'm interested in what your view is and what your message is to firms on executive pay, please.
Well, let me say 2 things. First of all,
Executive pay, who cares?
Determine their own pay, and of course for all chief executives there is always a sort of governance process for that, and a board governance process for that, and that's important.
We want cheaper Bank of England employees.
Earlier on,
We want cheaper managers.
Just put it into context what I've said before. And I'm not, look, to be very clear, I'm not advocating any level, any number, any approach. I just think that in the situation we're in, which is very
Situation.
difficult for lower income households. And it's particularly difficult when inflation is concentrated in things like energy and food, because those are the things when you look at the consumption baskets of different income groups in this country, those essential things take up a larger proportion of the consumption basket of the lower paid groups in the country than the higher paid groups, because they are essential things for living. And going back to the point I made about second round effects, I just think it's important to bear that in mind. I'm not saying more than that. I think it's important to bear that in mind when thinking about this, because there is otherwise I would say a sort of broader distributional outcome. That's the thing, because it's people who have the least bargaining power in this labour market that will find it most difficult.
David.
Yeah, life's tough. Life's competitive.
David Robinson, Market News. As the bank's had many years, many conferences on quantitative tightening, to think about quantitative tightening, why are we only having a gilt sales framework review now?
I see all these reporters and I'm like, man, I need a haircut.
There will be no gilt sales until after August. Thank you.
Well, the second question,
Once again, he went to the Bank of England and he didn't wear a tie. I just don't understand that.
To sell gilts, yes, I should say. As I said in my opening remarks, that's important. The bank can't sell any gilts at the moment because the MPC hasn't taken a decision either way on that question.
It's not a casual place.
Is to do the work, to do the evaluation that we said we were we thought we would take the decision certainly on doing, and most likely to do when bank rate reaches 1%.
What's up, Mo?
We will ask the staff to do. So they will be in close touch with market contacts, and particularly in the gilt market. And can I just emphasise? I mean, this will be, if it goes ahead, this will be the first gilt sale process by the bank. So we want to get. Obviously, it's an important thing to get right if we do it. There is a lot to be done to plan it. And we're asking the staff now to do the work to prepare it. The other thing I would say is, been very clear, and I've said this in previous interviews, that even if we decide we are going to go ahead, we will obviously have to take into consideration the context, both the economic context and the market context, when we come to that decision. And we will do that.
Just point out, sorry,
I was going to say it is worth stressing, as Andrew was saying, we've been doing quantitative easing since 2009, pretty much up until the end of last year. And never started quantitative tightening in that period. We have now started quantitative tightening. We didn't reinvest the proceeds of the gilt that matured in March. That's taken the APF down from £885 billion to 867. So we have started that, and we've now set out in a very deliberate fashion, building on the strategy that we set out for the first time last August, the next step that could take us towards gilt sales, which would obviously, given our maturity schedule, would obviously augment not reinvesting the proceeds of maturing gilts. But that's the first part of quantitative tightening, and then you'd have the potential for gilt sales that, as Andrew says, won't start before August. We'll revisit these questions in August, but that feels, given the issues, as we've stressed consistently, that we want to ensure that any gilt sales program is consistent with effective market functioning, with no disruption. That, from my part, with the kind of operational responsibilities for this, that in the bank, that's very much the right approach.
I'll just say very quickly, you say we've been talking about it for years, and that's true. Years ago, we set out a framework in which, and we updated it last August, in which we said we would only begin to consider this once bank rate had reached a particular level. That's the reason we're beginning to think about it only now. And the reason for that is we want bank rate to be the primary marginal instrument of policy, and that means that should we ever in future be hit by a negative shock, we would want to respond first by lowering bank rate, and that's why we want bank rate to rise to a particular level before. That's been the
You see how the lapel wrinkles? And you see the big puffy shoulders between where it's sewed, the sleeve to the jacket. It just shows it's a cheap suit. He doesn't make nearly as much money as some of the other guys. Or he doesn't spend money on clothes.
And mortgage rates have been mentioned a couple of times here today. What do you expect the effect of your interest rate changes and also of inflation that's draining household spending power might be on the housing market and on house prices in the near future? And what might that mean in turn for the economic outlook? Obviously, so far we've had quite robust house price growth in recent times.
Very quick. I mean, the house prices have some bearing on the forecast.
See, house prices, that's included in rent, real estate.
Certainly have some bearing.
Rent and wages are sticky.
But the effects of monetary policy on demand and thereby inflation are much, much wider than that. So we tend to think about the so-called transmission from policy to the economy much more broadly, because it is much broader than just house prices. I think that's all. I don't know if you want to add anything, Dave. That's all I would say.
Thank you very much.
I'll say one thing before we finish.
Tie prices are way up.
Likely to be Seb's last margin policy report press conference, because he's got another job in the bank, which we're very pleased about. So I just want to thank him for all he's done. An important part of getting us these events is done by Seb and his colleagues. He's been a terrific support to me, and I know to my predecessors. So thank you, Seb, for everything you've done.
Thanks, Seb.
Kind. And thanks all of you for coming. And take care, and I may or may not see you soon.
He's not going very far.
That's that. Keep running, man. Keep rolling. Rolling. Yeah, I was going to say. Oh, they just loop it, huh? I'm like, wow, they're back already? Yeah, there you go, bro. Shit show in the UK. Core inflation steadily going up. Growth, they lowered. Did you read the report yet? Come on, you read it, right? I gave you the link. Okay, I gave you the link. If you read it, they expect 2023 growth to be down. Okay, there's the answers you've been looking for. Yeah, Dr. Age, I am shocked at how casual they appear in the meeting. And I find, like, I would expect, and maybe I'm wrong, but, there would have been a time, at least in history, where the Bank of England would be not only prestigious, but ultra conservative. And I expect, old men to come out and speak beautifully and dress impeccably and be ultra conservative. And these guys like slouch in their chairs and just, it's weird. And they just talk like they're in a bar. It's like a cheap podcast. I mean, it's interesting. It's just really interesting. I like the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. They're simple and conservative. They know what they're doing. They come across like accountants. Like they just analyze it and they do what needs to be done. There's no, there's no spice to it. But then I forget his name now. The head of the RBNZ. He's a little. He sells it a little bit, which is nice. Like he's not so nerdy that he can't speak publicly. So he's sort of like he's the frat boy compared to all the accounting majors, right? But it's just straightforward. I like how they acknowledge their own cultural history of New Zealand, right? So on and so forth. What's up, Petey? So anyways, I think I'm out of juice, man. I'm out of juice. I know it's only so early in the morning. I'm sweating. I haven't slept enough. I have way too much caffeine. I am so tired. I'm sitting here and I'm sweating. It's gross. It's gross. But I've showered and everything. Why am I sweating? I'm rough shape, man. Rough shape. So, I don't know. I think I'm going to zip along, make some trades, see how things go, and then maybe take a nap. And then today is swing trading group. Oh. Wow, my monitor just went off. Wow. Okay, there is a sign. I need to go. Today is swing trading group. I invite you to join the swing trading group. It's an amazing group. It really is. It's an amazing group. Yes, you're going to learn how to implement your trades properly and plan properly, but the support aspect, the psychological aspect, the community aspect is truly amazing. There's the big sales pitch. It's truly amazing. I honestly believe in my core that this is something that you want and you need. And I highly recommend you join and just try it, even for a month. So a whopping $99 a month. To get access, yes, you have to join FX Bootcamp. That's $88 a year. And then after that, you upgrade your account for $99 a month. We meet weekly. Meetings are sometimes, we're usually 3, but sometimes 4 hours long. They're highly interactive. It's not just listening to me babble. You get to really improve your skills by discussing situations and topics with other traders. You get to know other traders and develop relationships with other traders. You have an opportunity, if you want to volunteer and speak in front of the group and show the trade plans that your group during group work has created, and so you can test your chops and your analytics and your ability to communicate your ideas. All this is available. I'm telling you, you probably need this. And it's my favorite 3 hours of the week. There you go. I think you should join. So try fxbootcamp.com. While you're at it, go to tradersway.com, open up a demo account. And peace on earth. May the pips be with you. May your profits be above average. I hope to see you later this afternoon, 4 p.m. Thursday. Oh, yeah, and tomorrow's non-farm payrolls. Cool. I need to probably remember that. Put it on my calendar, huh? So yeah. So have a wonderful morning. I'm sorry, man. I was up late trading. Literally sitting outside. It's dark. I got Bloomberg going on my phone. Eventually my phone died and I'm just sitting there, me and my laptop, and trading against the world. I bought oil at 107. It was good for a bit. It worked out great for a little bit. Just a little bit. So anyways, I'll see you later, huh? Hey, this Forex thing.